just yanked on that and pulled her 130 feet up into our rescuer, who then clipped his harness onto hers and pulled her the rest of the way.
That is like absolutely terrifying. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Extraordinary Shoe Store.
We were talking about being a junior lifeguard and whether or not it did affect your decision to be a firefighter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say like it definitely planted a seed that I didn't really realize until much later in life, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think my attentions just as like a young man kind of drifted more toward like art and music and the creative side of things. And then
so how intense was it being a firefighter in California rather than any other state?
I mean, obviously you're seeing like right now, right? Like the wildfires.
And like how was it back then, or did you not really face that?
I mean, we're facing it right now. So like where I work, like we're a city department, but there's a state system, right, called E.S.S, which is the Office of Emergency Services. And if they need, like, when one of these big fires breaks, they need everyone from the state. It's kind of like an all hands on deck situation. Like they'll call us and we will send guys, all over the state to go help out.
Okay.
So seasonally, yeah, we all work a lot more than we're supposed to. And it's good though. Like, if you love the job as much as I do and as much as other people do, we don't mind working extra days. You know what I mean? But fire season in California can be pretty brutal for a lot of people. It's, you know what I mean? You just never know. Like, for like 3 months out of the year, you have no control over your schedule. So it can be tough at times.
Yeah. So will you just be like at home sleeping and then all of a sudden you get a call?
Kind of, yeah. It happens that way sometimes, for sure. I can't speak for other departments, but for us, there's like a list of people and there's like hours. So as you accrue overtime hours, you get less priority. So it kind of spreads the wealth, so to speak, in terms of overtime. And so right now, and me personally, like I'm not a big campaign fire guy. Like I like working in the city. I like running medical calls. I like running structure fires, car accidents.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with, the guys who love going on those big wildland adventures. But for me, it's like, let the other guys go and I'll come fill in their spots, on shift. It's a little more my cup of tea, to be perfectly honest. I like taking showers. I like sleeping at night when I can. So, I'm not a big forest guy.
I actually thought
your
you
work
guys
schedule is mainly like a pretty set schedule, like 9 to 5.
It's not 9 to 5, but so we have basically there's 3 shifts in my department, A, B, and C. And so the way we work our schedule, it's 48 hours on, 96 hours off. So for 2 days, I move into a fire station like a hotel room. I move in, set up a bed, we go and we all shop together, put our own money toward lunch and dinners. We cook together, you know what I mean? We spend every second together as a crew of 3 because throughout the day, we have like 9 to 5 hours in the sense that throughout the day we're doing like business inspections or public education, like going to the schools and talking to kids or adults or whatever it may be, teaching classes, training. Like we have like a quote unquote business day. Once 9 to 5 is we're kind of through that part of the day. We're kind of, we go work out, we do our own sort of training, we make dinner together. And throughout the 48 hours, like no matter what we're doing, showering, sitting on the toilet, shopping, whatever it may be, for dinner, like if a call drops in our district, like we drop everything and we run out the door, get into
you go on the pole.
Yeah.
You ride the pole.
Sadly, it's all 1-story buildings in my department, so there's no pole. Sorry to ruin that for you. California, I think we're probably like the least amount of poles, unless you're in like San Francisco. I'm sure LA City probably has some. Oakland probably has some, but like where I work is mostly like a sort of bedroom community. It's like a lot of single-story buildings, and so no poles. Sorry, no poles, no Dalmatians. I hate to break it to you guys.
Oh no Dalmatians either.
Yeah.
I don't know why like a normal house doesn't have a pole in it. Like I'd love a pole. I think that'd be pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Pretty efficient means of travel. I got to go on a pole. I did a station visit in San Francisco once, just on a whim. just walked in and introduced myself, and I was like, I just want to slide down a pole so I can say I did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah,
You walk
it'd
into
be
the
sweet
interview
to have
and you were like, "Where's the pole?"
a pole. Yeah, basically, like we got to talking, and I saw the pole, and I was like, I'm riding the pole, and they were like, yeah, by all means. They're like, have at it, go nuts. It was a good time. Highly recommend it. You know, and obviously right now with the whole COVID thing, it's a little rough for all of us to have visitors, but like we love that stuff. Like when people show up and ask questions, want to sit in the engine and goof around, like that's a great part of our day.
I've
So, yeah.
always wanted to do that. Like
Dude,
I
just do
heard
it.
about. Yeah,
Do it.
should I just go to the fire station's right near my house? Should I just go over there and like try and hang out and chill with those guys or what?
I mean, I don't know if hanging out is like, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
ideal, but like honestly, I mean, our
You're
whole
like, "You guys
job,
wanna
our
get some
whole
food?"
reason we exist is to serve the community, and that's part of it. And so, I would say bring some donuts or some cookies, coffee.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like fancy coffee is another big one. And then just like cruise, ring the bell. Like I wouldn't go like early in the morning or like super late at night. You know what I mean? But yeah, cruise over, ring the bell, and be like, hey, I just want to sit in the fire engine, and they'll probably let you do it. I don't see why they wouldn't.
How you pick up the chicks?
That's I'm gonna plead the fifth on chicks. But yeah, there's obviously a bit of a stigma that comes with our job. But to be honest, like especially where I work, 99% of us, you know, are either married or in very serious relationships, kids. Like we're all because of like I would say the way our job is. Most of us are very family oriented. You know what I mean? So I'm like the only unmarried non-father in my entire department.
Oh, okay.
The
So it's good for you.
Bachelor.
Yeah, I'm like the only one, and unfortunately, like you know, I'm sure you know they I'm not going to be on the calendar anytime soon. If that's what I'm trying to say.
Which means that they probably would give you the dangerous job. They're like, he doesn't have a kid to go home to.
That honestly came up on a call. There was a call we had where our victim, so to speak, fell 160 feet down this like aquifer recharge. So it was basically like a 5-foot hole that went 160 feet down. And fortunately for her, there was like 20 feet of water. And so, and this is in a vineyard farming thing. And so the talk was because it was unprotected after 30 feet. So there was like 30 feet of like this like culvert pipe, which kept the dirt from caving in. But beyond that, it was like we didn't know what was going to happen. And so there was, for a second, there was some talk of like, well, if we're going to send anyone down, it's got to be him because he doesn't have kids. Which at the same time, it's like, well, I don't want to die. But fortunately, it all worked out. We ended up pulling her out a different method, and you know, it was one of the crazier calls I was on.
Wait, how did she get down there?
That's good. What was the other method?
So what we did was we sent down one of our guys. This is part of the technical rescue team. He went down about 30 feet and you know was protected by this like big plastic black pipe, for lack of better words. And we were able to have voice communication with the victim. And we lowered a rope down that had on the end of it these things. There's basically they wrap around your wrist. It's for various rescue techniques and methods. But basically, what it is you pull on our end of it, and it ratchets down on the victim's wrists. So we had that, and we had a harness that we kind of jimmied into something that she could slip on under her arms. So basically, between those two things, we just yanked on that and pulled her 130 feet up into our rescuer, who then clipped his harness onto hers and pulled her the rest of the way.
That is like absolutely terrifying.
It was, I mean, there was definitely a pucker moment, for lack of better words, especially when one of your brothers, you know, is 35 feet down, you know, in a hole. And it's all time sensitive, and you're trying to be as diligent and safe as possible. There's redundancy. There's a lot of ropes. I mean, it was like a ton of equipment. And at the same time, your victim is 160 feet down a hole, terrified, and now freezing because it was wintertime and it was wet at the bottom of the hole. You know what I mean? So definitely a call I will never go on again. You know what I mean? It's one of those ones that happened to be on duty. It was a nutty call. And fortunately, it all went well. Minor injuries for her, you know, which is knock on wood, very lucky. And everybody went home, which is a good day. Good day at the office.
Was
You ever take one of your friend's shifts and you get the call and you're like, I shouldn't have taken the shift.
I mean, you always like, I mean, you hate to say it because it sounds like you're really morbid, but like you want to go on fires and like big dangerous calls, you know, and it's terrible for the people who obviously live there.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that's what we signed up for. It's what we train every day for, you know, I mean, those are the big moments.
You just want to be there like on a couch watching TV.
No, and fortunately for me where I work, like we're so busy that there's very little of like sitting around, you know what I mean, which is good. I'm sure later in my career I'll want to sit around, but like right now it's fun running calls all day and all night for 2 days straight. So when you take a shift from someone and you get a big fire, like they're usually really bummed out. You know, it's like they should have been there. That was their fire, but it happens to everybody.
When you do save a person, like it was you in particular that got them, do you like, is there like a sense of gratitude or whatever? Because I remember one of my teachers actually, he told me one time that like he saved somebody from a fire, but like he hasn't been in contact with them ever since. Like they never like, you know what I mean? If somebody saved
For
my
sure.
life, I'd feel like obligated to like, reach out to them occasionally and tell them about like my gratitude and how I'm living a good life,
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. So it's a kind of a mixed bag, right? So we've had patients who we resuscitate them with CPR and other things like that, who have then thanked us, or they're, you know what I mean, have come to the station and said, hey, you saved my grandma's life. Here's some cookies or whatever it may be. But realistically, to be honest, like because of like what's called HIPAA, which is basically protects people's medical information. So let's say Mason falls off a tree, breaks his arm. I cannot use his name, address, or any information. So I can't relay any of your information to anyone, or else it's like a big felony. So a lot of stuff we do is very confidential and stays that way. And so, yeah, I mean, we get thanked here and there, but realistically, most of us, we never assume that's not why we're there. I would say as much as like we have the sort of bravado and attitude of this like sort of like very arrogant alpha male type people and females. There's a lot of humility that goes into the job. Like I think as an industry, never expect to be thanked. And if you're kind of looking for gratitude at all times, that's not really a career for you. It's a very, I don't know, quiet profession in that regard, in my opinion. I could be wrong about other people. Some people love shining the badge and telling everyone they're a firefighter. We're all a little bit guilty of that. Like, don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure my girlfriend would tell you that I mention it at least once a conversation. But for the most part, like
that's how you met.
No, not at all. I mean, I was a firefighter at the time, but we didn't meet because I was wearing a cool blue uniform. You know what I mean?
What, your uniform is blue?
So like we have like a station uniform, and it's all navy blue, Nomex, which is like fireproof-ish. And then we have like our turnout gear, which is like the big yellow or black coats you see like on the movies and whatnot. So it's honestly like when you see all of the equipment that I have per day on the engine or the average firefighter has, there's so much stuff, especially in California or like a small department like I work for. You got to wear a lot of hats. So on my rig, I have, the uniform, so to speak, or the personal protective equipment, which is what we call it, for a water rescue. So it's like a dry suit, fins, helmet, life jacket. I've got wildland gear, which is like grass fires, forest fires, which is like a little bit lighter, yellow material. I've got my day-to-day uniform that I can wear to like, emergency medical calls, which is basically like the blue pants, black boots, t-shirt that you see. We've got a little more of a formal shirt that we put on over that for like schools, business meetings, inspections, sitting with the chief. Then there's our turnout gear for fires, which is like big, heavy, coats, pants. We've got our air cylinders, helmets. I mean, like you name it, it's crazy. Like you feel like MacGyver or like a Navy SEAL. There's just so much junk that you have on the engine that you also need to be able to put on in like 30 seconds. So
when you resign, do you get to keep all that? Are you going to be able to keep all that gear?
So you get to keep some of it. I mean, like, I don't think you're supposed to, you know what I mean? But like for a lot of us, like especially like helmets and stuff get so beat up over the years that like you couldn't reuse it or give it to the next guy. But in terms of turnout coats and things, yeah, a lot of retired guys end up with it because it does expire. There's a shelf life. So when it's out of service, it's out of service, And so I think it's kind of situational and department specific. For us, like I get to keep the t-shirts and everything because who wants somebody sweaty, nasty ass t-shirts? But in terms of like the turnout gear, like if I quit tomorrow, it would probably get, we clean everything, we wash everything, we delouse everything. someone would probably end up with it as like their training kit or something like that.
Can't
When
just
they're
be like, I
first
lost
starting out.
it.
What's that?
That you can't just be like, I lost it.
Yeah. I mean, no, probably not. I mean, the stuff is like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you could, like I said, like a lot of people end up like I have patches from all the different places I've worked. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it is what it is.
It would be a flex to just open up your closet and you just got the suit right there, ready to go.
There's like kind of like this like I think vision we all have of like, oh, I'm gonna have a home office one day with all of my like cool fire memorabilia, and there's a lot of retired guys who do. So yeah,
I would just be ready for that oven fire.
there's also like, yeah, if you want to be that guy who's at your house ready to go at all times, I mean, you can bring your gear home, I guess. I mean, most of us now, because of like all the different chemicals we're exposed to and the nasty stuff that gets on all of our gear, we usually try not to keep it or take it home, just to keep it off like our families and our other laundry and everything else, because it's like the carcinogens, and I'm sure you guys have read all the different guys getting cancer in my line of work. So that's like a serious thing now. So because of the exposure and stuff that gets on all of our turnout gear, it's like it's kind of a weird cultural thing where it's like you don't wear turnouts into the station, you don't bring them home. You know what I mean? They stay in the car or the back of the truck or in the stations. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So what else, gentlemen? What else do you want to know about this insane line of work?
Was training to become a firefighter like, was it intense, or did you have to train for like every position? Like, were you the guy in the truck making the phone calls, operating the hose? Like, how was that all like?
So the way, like, from start to finish, the way it started for me was like you go through like what's called a college academy, so like a junior college, like a lot of them throughout the country, a lot of them in California. They host like a fire academy, and it's kind of like an introduction to all the different things we do. Which we can get into in a second, but just to like break, it's like the most basic level of like, like pulling hose, spraying water, cutting ventilation holes with chainsaws, operating fans, doing different rescues of people off ladders, climbing ladders, throwing ladders, the real basic stuff that we do, day to day fire type stuff. For a lot of us, there's also a blend of the emergency medicine side, because that's 90% of our calls is for sick people, hurt people, car accidents, cutting cars. I mean, it's, what I'm saying? So you get like an introduction to that at a college level. From there, especially nowadays, it's starting to get to a point where you have to do that first, and then you start applying to departments. Once you're on with a department, they run you through their own academy, because everybody, like I said earlier, it's kind of like everyone's their own little nation. And so everybody loads their hose differently. They all pull their hose differently. They have different terms for things. They throw ladders differently. So all of that you have to kind of relearn for your department. It's all department specific. It's really physical. There's a lot of, for me personally, like I was lucky that I was kind of like considering a military career, so I was kind of in decent shape. But it's a lot of like putting a weight vest on, getting used to heavy things, because like all of our gear is heavy. So when I walk into a fire, I'm 110 pounds heavier than I am right now, and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. So our gear is heavy. So you get used to going up and down stairs, carrying heavy equipment. The hoses kick back with 75 pounds of pressure. So just like grip strength, it's a lot of physicality. And so I would say the majority of the training for me personally leading up to it was physical, running stairs, doing stuff like that. So yeah, it's intense. Oh yeah. I mean, it's, and then your first couple of weeks, I'm sure, most of the average human being has not been inside of a burning building or felt heat like that or anything. So your first couple of days of being on, an air tank, for someone like me, I'd never scuba dived in my life. Like that in and of itself created some anxiety, where it's like, it's just a weird thing to have something on your face and you can hear every breath you're taking, and there's a limited amount. So there's a lot of different mental games that go into it. And now, this stage of my career, I'm pretty comfortable with a lot of that stuff, but you have to maintain. You know what I mean? Like I have to work out, and I'm not a big gym guy. So for me, like that's the hardest part of my job, is like staying in shape so I don't die.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's pretty intense, but it's also like really fun. Like you think about like training for me, job training is like playing with a fire engine. You know what I mean? If I want to go drive and, parallel park the thing, like that's part of my job. Pulling hose, throwing ladders, climbing roofs, rappelling with rope. I mean, all that stuff is fair game. You know what I mean? Because it's all stuff that we do. And so, yeah, the training side of it, it's intense for sure. It's hard. There are rough days, especially where I work. It's 110 degrees right now. but it's
Going-
it's fun. It's great.
With the job, all like very
Philly running up
serious
the
and-
stairs like Rocky getting ready.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
honestly, that's honestly like as an Italian, yeah, that's kind of. I would put on the Rocky theme music. This is not even a joke. I put on the Rocky theme music and run up and down stairs. There was a stadium by my mom's place, and yeah,
my
I used to honestly do the Rocky thing. I'm embarrassed to say that, but you know what? Whatever.
With the
working.
job being like all that like
Have you
very
ever
stressful
worked
and a serious
you
situation, do you ever
disliked working with at all throughout your career?
Sorry, I got
Like,
two
have you ever
questions at once
walked
there.
into
What
one
was
of
what,
yeah, you can go first, Mitch, and I'll go second.
First, you go first, Josh.
I don't want to ask anything that would be deep or too dark. So I was like thinking like, is there anything lighthearted or like really funny that happens on the job?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, you can ask deep, dark questions. It's fine. Like, if you can't, for me personally, it's just like there's a certain, and this is going to sound morbid, but I'll explain myself. Like, there's definitely a detachment you have to have. So, like, let's say Josh or Mason. Like, I don't walk into your house and you're dead on the floor, and I'm thinking, oh my God, Josh, this person's son, this person's brother, you know, this person's boyfriend, whatever. Like, that's not how I look at it. I look at it as like, okay, I don't have a pulse. I don't have breathing. These are the things I can do. And you go into an algorithm that's like, you know, compressions, breathing, you know, all the different things we do to resuscitate someone. So I don't want to sound callous or anything, but realistically for my job, there's a serious detachment you kind of have from the human side, the emotional side of things. So like deep, dark questions, like you can ask whatever you want, man.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because it's like these are all strangers to me. I'm there for 10 minutes. I do my job, and there are certain calls that definitely hit you hard. Like there are memories that I have that are I'll be stuck with the rest of my life. But I think, in all honesty, to do my job, you kind of have to have this weird sort of ability to kind of like stow your emotions and the human side, and just go in, operate, do everything you can, you know, to help the people in your community, and then you got to move on. So that's why a lot of us have really dark senses of humor, crack a lot of jokes. We play a lot of pranks on each other, stuff, because it's like if you don't laugh, like you're gonna spend most of your time crying. So yeah, so you can ask me whatever you want, but like lighthearted stuff, oh dude, like there are some calls you go on, you just deal with so many different aspects of humanity that like there are just like nutty people out there, and there are people that call 911 for like the craziest things. You know, and you have these funny moments, especially like, you know, because kids think you're this big hero. So like some of the best moments of my career is just like hanging out with like a bunch of kids on the street playing basketball. You know what I mean? Because they're just like, this is a fireman. He's like this big thing. And it's like, they don't know. I'm just like some guy, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of lighthearted moments, especially like within the firehouse. You know, it's kind of like, you hate to say it because of the reputation, but it's kind of like a frat house.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of goofing around. There's a lot of inside jokes, pranks, shit talking. You know what I mean? It's a ton of fun. So yeah, it's definitely, I would say most of my time I spent having a great time. And there's those moments where it's like, I hope I never have to do that again. But yeah, it's a great career in that aspect where it's like you spend a lot of time having just like right now I'm loving it. You know what I mean? It's the greatest.
I actually have a lot written down. You know, I was actually going through Reddit, which is where I found you. But
Right.
I saw that a lot of firefighters there's these volunteer firefighters, which are kind of different, I believe. But a lot of them, because I know that a lot like firefighters, you know, they don't usually consider themselves heroes and things like that. They're very humble. But it's like these very cringe videos online of these like kids that are
Oh yeah.
kid firefighters, and they're like dancing and like putting their firefighter hat on, and like what do you, as like the real deal, what do you think about that?
I mean, like, so there's this running joke, right? I'm sure you saw it on the fire subreddit where there was this shirt that came out with this slogan that said, "I fight what you fear," which makes all of us just like so sick to our stomachs. But now it's like that's a label for these guys. Like we literally, it's like, oh, he's one of those "I fight what you fear" guys. I would just chalk it up as like these are young kids for the most part. You know what I mean? And honestly, shout out to the volunteer departments across the country because they're doing my job, but they're doing it for free. You know what I mean? Which takes a lot of courage, balls, a little bit of craziness, and a really, you know, they got to love their community because they're serving their community with no benefit, really. You know what I mean? Other than the satisfaction of doing the job. So before I trash these kids on these TikTok videos or whatever, like, you know, kudos to all the volunteer guys out there. because they're doing the same job I'm doing, but I'm doing it with a paycheck and a pension, health insurance. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
props to them, man, for sure. They're the real heroes, in my opinion.
Do they do like everything that you would do as a firefighter? Like, are they put on the same job as you? Like, do they work alongside of you or what?
So we have like California is a little different in terms of like the volunteer stuff. The West Coast in general, there are some volunteer departments like within my organization. We're in, we're the city of Merced, but the county around us has what's called PCFs or paid call firefighters. So basically, you guys sign up. You want to be a firefighter. You go through the training. You'll have a pager, or I'm sure maybe it's cell phones by now, where if a big fire or a car accident comes out, you'll get paged. And if you want, you have gear of your own. You drive in and you help run the call. But throughout the country, that's a lot of just departments in general. These guys just have pagers and other things where they get a page that says, "Hey, we need guys. There's a fire down the street." They just hop in their cars and go. You know what I mean? So California is a little different. Like I don't have a ton of experience with volunteer guys. Really, I was only a volunteer myself for like 4 months. But a lot of people start that way. A lot of the Midwest, East Coast, other places in the country, it's like 90% of their department are volunteers, and there's 1 or 2 paid full-time guys. So it's kind of different throughout the country. Yeah, but they do the same. Yeah, in terms of your question, sorry, it was a very long answer. But they do the same stuff we do. They're expected to have the same knowledge, training, and capabilities that I am. You know what I mean? And so, it's, in my opinion, a little scary because it's like you never know who's going to show up, I guess. But again, like I wish I had more experience, and there's a lot of other guys who, especially on Reddit, who could tell you a lot more about the volunteer experience than I could.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
I really kind of want to try out volunteer firefighting for myself, but I was just like thinking about like I wonder if I'm gonna be able to do everything else that like the other guys get to do, or if I'm gonna be mainly back at the station doing whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. I mean, honestly, depends. I don't know where you live. You know what I mean? Like, where do you live? What state?
Coast, Virginia.
Oh, dude, honestly, Google it. I'm sure, like East Coast, other places, like I'm sure you can find a spot. You can talk to them, and they'll line you out. They'll tell you this is what you need to do. This is what we expect. This is what you're gonna, be doing, and just shop around. Find one that, like you're saying, gives you the full experience. There's gonna be more training. You know what I mean? They're not just gonna let you show up and put on an air pack and go into a burning building. And so, but yeah, there's a lot of really good opportunities where you're at. If you're on the East Coast, man, I'm telling you, some of the best guys, most dialed in firefighters I've ever met work for volunteer departments. And that is gospel. I've taken a lot of classes with guys who run volunteer departments, and some of the best experiences I've had so far. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Have you ever been like injured on the job? Like, have you ever gotten wounded while going into the fire or no?
Never going into the fire. I got hurt, and oh god, I mean, I'm going to tell everyone to listen to this, but there's a captain that I had, one of my favorite people of all time. I hope he's listening. I won't say his name. Everybody in my department will know. But yeah, he runs some really intense drills, some really fun drills, and he kind of flies off the cuff. And so I had an injury in a training sort of mishap. But it was minor injury. I was only out for a month, no big deal. In terms of like a fire injury, knock on wood, nothing crazy for me. Yeah, I got a sweet burn on my neck because I pulled out a burning windowsill and hit myself in the face.
Is Mason recording? Is Mason back? What is going on right now?
Mason.
I'm back.
There he is.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
working
cool.
now. It's working now.
Rad. Do you have a next question for him?
Yeah,
Hit me,
so what's
Mason.
like the craziest call you've ever gotten, or do you guys just like have you ever just been sitting around and someone comes up with the call, then they're just pranking you?
I mean, we get a lot of weird stuff like that, but I mean, crazy calls, man. It's hard to say.
It's like, oh, come on,
We definitely had one where, so there was this massive call going on in the city, and so my city it's 5 engines in one truck, and then we're surrounded by like Cal Fire, which is like the state fire department, but their staffing is pretty limited. So when we get a huge fire, like, okay, so let me preface: LA or San Francisco, Indianapolis, like these bigger places, where you're at on the in Virginia, like Norfolk or whatever. bigger cities have a ton of apparatus, a ton of people. They get a fire. There's like, 70 people there, whatever. Where I am, we're like 19 guys on shift, and then we're lucky if we get 4 or 5 other people from the county. So when we have a big fire, the whole department's there. So if anything else happens in the city, it's like, good luck. And so in this particular crazy call, there ended up being, we were the last engine just because of where it was and where we were positioned on this massive apartment complex, 8 units involved, searches, fires, it was just crazy. And as we were about to rotate in, to operate, another call, got toned out is what we call it. Like when dispatch presses the button that makes all the noise in our engines and on, our stations. And so it was on the opposite side of town, and it was just our one engine. And it ended up being a car fire with a house also on fire, a fence line on fire, 90 plants that ended up being marijuana, and a down power line, like all in one call. And there were 3 of us, and we only had 500 gallons of water because there weren't any hydrants. Yeah. And so like that was definitely, that whole call was a podcast in and of itself.
How did that even begin? Like, how does a fire like that? How did the marijuana light on fire?
So that was just because it was in the backyard, but it was there was a car on fire.
Babe, do you want me to bring you a plate because everyone wants to eat?
Just eat that way. We're right there. Sorry, stand by.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Can be in the podcast too.
I'm in huge trouble. And so, like, something like that, how it starts, who knows? In this case, it was like this car was on fire, and I think the person drove it into their backyard for who knows what reason. And from there, once the gasoline tank kind of like exploded, the fuel tank kind of burst or whatever happened, the fuel let out, and all of it was burning, so it spread to a fence, a field, and everything else. So it was a circus. And like I said, there were 3 of us on the engine and 500 gallons of water, which our hoses are 160 gallons per minute, the smaller attack lines that we use. So we were out of water in about a minute and a half, and it was just, it was, it was one of those calls where you're just like, how did this happen and what do I do?
Now, were you the one driving the truck, or did you work the hose, or what were you?
Yeah, so I'm a firefighter. So in my department as a firefighter, I sit in the back seat. It's my job to pull the hose lines, be on the nozzle operating, and I'm on an engine. So to specify, there's like engines and there's trucks. So the engines are the ones with all the hose in the back. There's a big water tank inside. In my department, we run the medical calls for the most part. And then there's the truck, which is the one with the big ladder on top, and they have more tools. In my department specifically, they don't have water at all or hose. What they do, their job is to pop the doors for us, like force their way in, do the searches, pull the people out, cut holes in the roof to ventilate the fires. A lot of the technical rescue stuff falls on the truck crews. So those are the big distinctions. For me as an engine firefighter, on a fire, my primary job is get the hose, take it inside, put the fire out, get water on the fire. You know what I mean? Car accidents and stuff, I'm like the medical guy. Like I go in and do the patient care. And it's, with a small department like mine, you kind of bounce around, But I would say that as an engine firefighter, my number one job on a fire is to take the nozzle, find the fire room, put the fire out.
Mason,
Did you say at your job seniority?
What's that?
Would you say at your job there's a lot of seniority? Are you like, hey Josh, no, you're cooking dinner tonight? Like,
yeah, like okay, so right now, like we've got 6 new guys, right? And they're the probationary guys. We call them probies, and it's kind of expected.
Throw them a mop.
Yeah, it's kind of expected that they take the charge on cleaning and making sure everything's dialed in the stations and cooking. And when we do training, they're kind of like given the hardest tasks, and we all paid our dues. Like when I was on probation, same thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, at this point in my career, I'm like kind of on the bottom, but not quite. So I'm a little bit higher up, but not enough to like I would look like a jerk if I went around ordering the probies around, in my opinion. But yeah, there's a lot of like culture, like of that where it's like you got to pay your dues, and then even then, there's always one guy who never admits that you're just a normal guy. Now you're always on probation in his eyes. It's kind of the way it goes. It's kind of like high school, to be honest. You know what I mean? You have your seniors, you have your freshmen, and then everyone's kind of floating in the middle. Some guys are really respected. Other guys are kind of bullied. It's just life. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's kind of the best thing I can say is it's kind of like high school. You know what I mean? There's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of weird rules. There's certain people it's like, oh, don't mess with him. And then other people kind of like, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know what I mean? Like every department
Yeah.
has the same personalities. It's kind of like same circus, different clowns. I'm fortunate where I work, where like everyone for the most part gets along really well. So I don't deal with too much. Like none of us really dealt with a whole lot of hazing or anything crazy like that. Some departments have horror stories.
King
Like, I was
over
pretty
some hot
fortunate.
rocks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that would ever happen, but yeah, there's like some weird stories out there. And you know, most of the stuff we do is pretty lighthearted, you know, and pretty fun, and it's you've got a lot of different personalities, so there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. But for the most part, like I was pretty fortunate. Like I had a pretty mellow probation compared to friends of mine who got hired in other places, and we're all a big family. You know what I mean? I kind of know
Ever
everybody's
get someone
kids
coming
and
in for
wives.
training and you're just like, I don't know about you. Put him behind the hose.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's, yeah, I mean, when they're new, we try to get them as much time on the nozzle, as much time with the tools, because we want to know, like, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, we all depend on each other. Like, in a serious situation, like, I got to know that this guy can put out the fire, or I don't have to,
Yeah.
you know, I can trust him to be like, hey, if I go down and I get injured in a fire, like, this guy's coming in to get me and knows how to do that. And so there's a lot of, like, you really want to boost up your new people and build them up.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, it's like that guy could save my life. And also on the other side, it's like I don't want him to be a liability. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
he or she goes down in a fire or like freaks out or panics, and you know, God
You have
forbid,
to worry about that too. Yeah.
for sure. You know what I mean? And it's I would say the pressure is really on most of us. And it's funny. It's kind of like the military, just from the veterans that I've spoken with, where you're less concerned about failing on a personal level. You're mostly concerned with like, I don't want to let the other guys down, or I don't want to do something to get somebody else hurt. Like you would rather die yourself than have anybody else die because you made a mistake, which is a really dramatic way of saying that, but that's kind of the reality. Like I'm more nervous on the fire ground, just doing my job because of how it will affect others. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Do the
Would
new
you
people,
say
are
like
they the
the
ones that?
latest
Oh
you've
wait,
ever been
go on.
called into work or have left work has been?
The latest, I mean, so like we've had calls come out at 2 a.m. to be like, hey, we've got a massive fire going on. We need more people to come into town and just like sit on an engine and run all the medical calls and all the other calls that might happen because our whole department's tied up on a big thing. Those calls come out, I mean, any time of day. Like I said, it's like 48 hours, you know what I mean, that my shift is on. So my time coming in and out of work is pretty normal. It's 8 a.m. Like I'm expected to be there before 8, get all my stuff on the gear and be ready to go, ready to work, clean shaved, showered by 8 a.m. And then typically my shift ends 48 hours later at 8 a.m. So we don't really have a lot of weird stuff like that, but there are times when, you know, a big emergency or guys go out of the county for like big state fires, like those calls can come at any time. You know what I mean? And you try to do your best, especially, you know, me, like I'm still pretty young in my career. Like you try to answer as many of those calls as you can. But, you know, granted, there's some leeway. Like if I'm out drinking beers with my friends and I'm not supposed to be on duty, it's like they don't expect me to just show up. You know what I mean? But yeah, so like I would say the latest call I ever got where I showed up for work was probably around 11 p.m.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's kind of, and granted, that's just my department specifically. Other departments, they don't really even do that. You know, they're big enough where they don't worry about, oh, we got to bring other guys in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was wondering, have you ever pulled a cat out of a tree? Like, does that actually happen?
Yeah, it does. It does. It took 3 years, but I finally got one. And like most of those calls go, as soon as you put the ladder up to the tree, the cat jumps out. So yeah, I had all these people sitting outside watching their poor cat in the tree, and the cats always come down. Like they got up there, they can get down. And of course, like you throw the ladder, the cat freaks out and he jumps, you know, 20 feet. And you're like, oh God. And like you just pray it doesn't hit something or get impaled on a fence. And it's like you got the little kids out there, and then here comes, you know, freaking Sparky the cat jumping out of the tree 25 feet, you know. And so so yeah, we've had a couple of those. I had a dog in an air vent once. That was a weird call. I just recently, like a couple of weeks ago, had some chickens in a sewer drain. So
Oh wow.
in terms of
Hopefully
the
all
animal calls,
successful
you get some
rescues.
weird stuff. Yeah, actually, yeah. I've got. I mean, the cat jumped out of the tree, but he was fine.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I don't know. I haven't heard from the cat either.
Oh yeah, he hasn't reached out.
No, I didn't get a card from him in the mail or anything.
What about have you ever heard about the parrot? Like there was like this one parrot and it knew curse words. I'm pretty sure it was up on the roof of a house and like the firefighters came to save it and it was like insulting them. Did you
I've
ever
seen
hear
that.
about
I've seen
that?
that video. I've seen that video for sure. For sure. The fire world is a pretty small world. So like if there's like a weird call like that, most of us find it on either Reddit or Instagram or like, you know what I mean? We're all kind of in the same network. But yeah, I remember seeing that video. I haven't had any parrot calls. Or snakes. I see a lot of like the guys in Florida deal with like gators and snakes and stuff, and it's like, oh my god, I'm not a
Yeah.
snake guy. Like that's. I'm in Texas right now, and there was a snake crawling around my girlfriend's dad's house, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm good on that. Like, not a snake guy. Not a snake guy. But yeah, a lot of animal related calls. Now I'm thinking about all the animal related calls I've been on. So it's like, there are a lot of weird calls like that.
Do you have any more?
I mean, the dog in the air vent was one that went viral online. Like we have a guy who does all of our like social media, so to speak, and he does videos for us. And that was one that, for whatever reason, like you can go and pull grandma out of a burning building, and people are like, "Yeah, that's cool." You pull a cat or a dog out of something, the internet blows up. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
that's when they put you on the news and all this other stuff, and it's like this is ridiculous. Like you know what I mean? You walk a couple ducks across the road, you'll be an internet celebrity. You know, it's just like whatever. But yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of another one. That's pretty much it. Like we've had a couple weird like dogs stuck in weird things. Like dogs tend to get themselves their heads stuck in things all the time, which is like I don't know what's wrong with dogs.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I think the only real like fire like within a burning building rescue I ever had was a dog. Like we get a lot of, especially where I work, there's a lot of people with a lot of small dogs for whatever reason. And so yeah, we've definitely had some cats, some dogs, and things like that pulled out of fires.
so people
yeah.
can get out on their own? Like people typically don't need anybody to come in and get them?
For the most part, like, and again, knock on wood, like you never. I mean, that's when things get really serious when you have someone trapped inside. Like that's like a big, you know, I don't know, serious moment. But for the most part, like most people get out on their own, which is good. You know what I mean? Which is what we want. And we do a lot of stuff like public education wise, teaching kids how to, you know, what to do in a fire and things like that. For that reason, it's a lot easier if we get on scene and everyone's out, because then we know it's like, okay, like let's go do our job, let's get this thing knocked down as quickly as we can. But there's not that other, you know, factor of like there's somebody in here, because like the reality is like our job, we focus on the rescue side of it. If there's someone inside, that is our primary goal, and we will commit a lot of resources to that. And so that affects fireground operations. You know what I mean? Like if we're solely focused on putting out the fire, that's gonna make the fire. It's one of those things where it's with a small department, you got to really divide up, you know, your resources, who's doing what, and really kind of like split your crews in terms of what their responsibilities are. And so when you have a rescue, it's tough, especially as human beings, to not like, hey, we're all gonna go get this person to be the big hero. Like you really got to be disciplined and let the crew on the rescue assignment do their job, and then you do your job on fire attack, and the ventilation crew does their job. Does that make sense? Like it's when you have the human element in there, it really changes the dynamic on the fire ground for sure.
Have anything right now, Mason? Anything in particular? All right, he might be out again. All right, cool. Let me think here. I have a little bit of a list right here.
Go ahead, man.
I've should have crossed this stuff out. All right. I'm All right. Well, I'll knock out the question that one of our co-hosts, he couldn't make it tonight, but he really wanted to make it. And
Okay.
He texted me a question. I have no idea really. I'm kind of an idiot, but so that in case anybody at home is thinking, "Oh, that's a really great question," because he's a pretty clever guy, you know.
Yeah, right on, man.
It isn't me. It isn't me that is asking this question. But
Okay.
what would you are fire stations properly funded in the United States of America?
Oh my god. Okay. Well, here's where I get in big trouble. I would say for the most part, because I mentioned where I work and everything else, to save my job, I'm going to say yes. The reality is, though, we are competing with a lot of different city organizations, right?
Mhm.
So and it's tough to say yes, no, whatever, because again, I'm only speaking from my experience. But we are fortunate in my organization to have a very strong union presence, and we have a pretty decent relationship with our city where we have the funding we need. Now there are cuts that get made, there are things that happen, because we're tax based, right? So we're part of the general fund. So all the taxes that come into the city, we get a chunk of that. And we negotiate for it, we fight for it, we campaign for it. It's part of the job. And other places are different, but the reality is most municipal departments, that's the case. So having said that, if something happens like right now with the economy and there isn't that tax revenue, like everybody gets affected. You know what I mean? Everybody has to make sacrifices, cuts, and you knock on wood, God forbid, it's not layoffs and things like that where it costs people their livelihood. But I can't speak for the rest of the country. There's a lot of things that go down politically that, as a fire service, it's hard for us to swallow. We've seen a lot of our brothers and sisters get laid off, lose their jobs, have stations shut down, have engines get browned out, things like that. It's tough. It's tough to really have a straightforward answer for you. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be as PC as I can. But there's just like any other civil service, you know what I mean? It's tough. It is really tough. And some unions have more sway than others. Some people are more organized than others. Some people's cities have a ton of money and they're not worried. So you really, I would say as a service, we do the most we can with what we've got. And yeah, I'm sure most of us would agree. Yeah, if we had a lot more money, we could get friggin' spaceships that could put out fires. But the reality is, we gotta make do. You know what I mean? And if that means riding a 20-year-old engine, hey, that you got what you got. I'm fortunate, to be honest. Like, we have a really good, solid relationship. We have great apparatus, great equipment. If there's a need, it gets taken care of. So props to our city and everybody else. I'm in a very fortunate situation in that regard. Other people I know, not so much. You know what I mean? Their equipment's beat up. You see some of the other cities nationwide and the stuff they're going through. Hats off to those guys, those men and women who work with bare bones equipment and still get the job done. So yeah, the reality is different for everybody. But yeah, it's a good question. Like, there's a lot of issues that go on. A lot of people don't have the funding they need. And all of us would agree that it's like, yeah, if we had more funding, this, and that could be better. But I would say as a service, part of the job, part of the ability to do it is that problem solving aspect where it's like, hey, this is what we've got. We got to do the job. This is what the community expects. We can't sit there and be like, oh, sorry, our engine wasn't brand new, so we couldn't make it to your house and your grandma died. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have that luxury. We got to make it happen no matter what.
You can't complain about that. Well, shout out to Paul for that question. He's actually our editor, so he's gonna hear that.
Good work, Paul. That was a great question.
Yeah, great work, Paul. Now back to my stupid questions. Have you ever like what is the weirdest way a fire can start? Like, have you or any weird situation or emergency, with the exception of the pet emergencies, of course.
I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on, but weird fire starting. I mean, I think probably the weirdest fire, in the sense that it was like, who even thought that would happen for these people, was they were staining a floor or painting or something. I think they were doing like a wood stain. And so what most of us know now, like, as trained firemen, but the common folk, so to speak, the community maybe doesn't understand, is that if you stack up a bunch of oily rags or like veneer or whatever it may be, like, that'll eventually combust. Like, it'll just warm itself up and combust, to make it very basic level language. And so we had a fire and these people were home, and it was like, all of a sudden they were like, yeah, our house is full of smoke. Like, it's getting hot. Like, it's the bedroom we were painting. And we went in, put the fire out, and we realized, just through investigating everything, that it was just these oily rags just self-combusted, you know what I mean? And started burning the room. And so that was probably one of the weirder fires, where it was just like, these people were sitting in their living room and all of a sudden their house is full of smoke and one of the bedrooms is on fire. So that was kind of an odd one.
Oh yeah. Any advice for anybody to like avoid like a fire?
Smoke detectors. Have your smoke detectors and make sure they work. I know they're annoying and they make noise and whatever, but it's like, have your smoke detectors operating. It'll save. I would say 9 times out of 10 when we're on structure fires, there's no noise, which is like, these people probably would have saved a lot of their property in their house. If the alarms were going off, they woke up and saw, this is on fire or whatever it may be. In terms of preventing fires, I mean, check your, I mean, it's tough to say, right? Like if you're renting, you're kind of at the mercy of your landlord. But a lot of the fires we get are attic fires that start with like faulty electrical. Older houses, you got a lot of stuff like that going on. You got to be careful with how many like appliances you load into one circuit. What else? Don't keep a bunch of flammable stuff inside your house. I mean, I feel like that's pretty like common knowledge. I'm trying to think what else I would even say to be like how to prevent fires. Don't light a bunch of candles and then leave. Don't burn food on the stove. Common sense stuff. But I'd say the big thing in terms of preventing your whole house from catching on fire versus being something small or isolated is smoke detectors. Make sure your smoke detectors work.
Do you have anything right now, Mason, or no?
If you could change anything about your job or where you work, or maybe your boss, what would it be? Like, do you want the firefighter calendars back, or what?
Yeah, I would love to see my fat hairy body on a calendar.
Is your whole crew like repping your station? Like,
If there was something I could change, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, this is gonna sound corny as hell, but like, this was honestly like the job I always wanted. I just didn't know existed. Like, there's not much I would change. I think that's why I love it so much. I mean, granted, it's like, yeah, I would love to make $1 million doing it, or I'd love to like not probably
drive your truck back to your house so you can beat all the traffic.
Yeah, I would love to drive Code 3 with the lights on everywhere I go. I mean, I honestly like there's like goofy things like that, right? It's like, yeah, it'd be cool to be a billionaire and do this job, or it'd be cool to like not probably get cancer in 20 years. But like, I mean, honestly, like from the schedule to the people I work with to the things we get to do, I mean, it's a fantastic job. Like, I mean? It's really hard to complain when you look at like what I used to do, working 9 to 5, or like what other people go through to make them, to make ends meet. Like I'm pretty lucky. It's a fantastic job. It really is. So there's really not much I would change. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to like not have some, of the psycho people trying to kill us on calls, or, lighting trash cans on fire in the middle of the night. But like, you take the good with the bad,
Oh yeah, definitely. Any advice for anybody who would like to be a firefighter?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The best advice I have is like, go to a fire station, talk to those guys, see what they do day to day, see what we do, get ready to sweat, get ready to work hard. It's challenging. It's a brutal interview process. It's worth it though. Every aspect of it is worth it. Like going back to school, getting in shape, doing all the things that I do, and all the things I had to go through, it's been worth it. It's been great. Like sitting up at night, dealing with grandma for the third time that day, you know what I mean? Pulling her off the toilet and all that nasty stuff we do. It's worth it. It's a fantastic job. You feel good about what you do. You get to see the community and like how they treat you and how they respect you. And it's just an awesome, it's worth it is what I'm trying to say. But in terms of my advice, like let's say you strip all that away and it's like, you just want this job. My biggest thing is like, get yourself physically and mentally prepared. Go sit in an ER in a hospital. If you can't deal with the sight of blood, guts, poop, nasty people doing nasty things, like it's not the job for you.
At a restaurant.
Yeah, like it's
Listen to
because a
people.
lot of people just think it's like, oh, you have to be really brave and not be afraid of fire. No, that's nonsense. The biggest, like, to me, determining factor for anyone trying to get into this job is like, you have to be able to stomach the gore and the feces and the nasty stuff and the people who've been drinking for 17 years straight or smoking crack and like all the stuff that they're going through. Like you have to be able to deal with like people more than being brave in the middle of a fire. Like we'll train you for the fire. You'll be good to go. You'll be comfortable in a burning building. We can train that. You can't train people to really be able to stomach things, to be humble, to be able to sit there and talk to a methed out lunatic who wants to stab you and do your job. You know what I mean? I highly recommend people to like go out, volunteer, see what we do day to day, really immerse yourself before you take the plunge. Because I'll be honest, like there are horror stories where these guys are the son, grandson, whatever, of firefighters. They want to do the job. They're really gung ho. They're all about it. And their first day on, they realize like they fainted the sight of blood. It's like that's not going to work out. So yeah, that's my advice. That and get physically fit. It's a very physically demanding job. Everything is heavy. It's always hot. Everything you put on makes you sweat. We lose 2 to 3 pounds per fire. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to handle that side of it.
It's one of the most tactical skills that like you've earned from the job and the training and everything.
Oh God, there's so
Able to
many
wake up
things.
on
'Cause,
time.
like, I came in, yeah, more or less. My sleep schedule's all over the place. Yeah, you get really good at running with no sleep. I'll say that much.
Mhm.
But I also was in a band and played, worked in the restaurant, so I didn't really sleep a whole lot anyway. So I think I was pretty good on that one. In terms of the technical skills, I mean, there's so many things that I've learned, like about building construction, about fixing things, stuff about driving and diesel motors and things that I never really experienced. Like I lived in San Francisco for 10 years, so I didn't have a car until I was like 25. So there was a lot of stuff like just weird life skills that I picked up as an adult versus like I should have probably had at your age. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think what else. I mean, now with like my background with the USAR, which is our urban search and rescue teams, there's a lot of like rope skills, heavy lifting, trench rescue, like a lot of technical stuff like that. I've really honed in on my chemistry stuff with being a hazmat specialist. Medically now, I can kind of identify and treat things a lot better than the average person because I'm an EMT and I have field experience. So there's a ton of aspects of it. Like it's weird the things you learn on the job that you were like, huh. Like I'm glad I know this now, but it's like I would have never learned this otherwise.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So there's a lot of weird stuff
donuts
like
as
that.
well, right? You get free food, don't you?
Free food?
Okay.
No. Free
No,
food
is
from
that the
who?
only?
What? I mean,
Like when you go to the
people will drop off stuff for us. Like we get a lot of like pies and cakes and things like that dropped
Off a
off.
McDonald's order.
But no, like every now and then someone will buy you a round of coffee and stuff. And for the most part, we try not to say yes to that just because it's like our job isn't to go out and get free stuff. Our job is to serve the community, and it's like your tax dollars is what pays me anyway. So I'm good. You've already done me a great service by giving me a livelihood. But no, we pay for our own meals out of pocket. We pay for all the food in our stations out of pocket, the coffee and stuff like that. Like all of the crews kind of get together and pool their money. So no, there's not a lot of free food going on.
Oh, I maybe that might just be a cop thing, but I always thought there was like a whole thing with like they'll give you a donut or whatever for free every time you go. I don't know.
No, I'm sure our brothers and sisters in blue also pay for their own meals. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Shout out to all the cops out there. Not a great time to be a cop. I apologize. You should have studied harder and become firefighters. But yeah, not a lot of free food. I mean, like I said, like there, we have a lot of older ladies who come and drop off pies and cookies and things, but not a ton
Maybe
of.
ask a Wookiee to bring you some food.
Oh, dude, they have to. If you're like gonna ever visit a fire station and you show up without cookies or donuts, bad day for you, man.
I think me and Mason might actually go visit one together, and maybe we'll bring Arby's or something.
Dude, they would love it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like coffee's a big one. If you bring like dialed in good like artisanal coffee, oh my god, yeah, they'd be in heaven.
All right. Well, you mentioned you had a band, and I mean, as a band member myself, I was interested in that. Like, what did you play? Like, what was that all
God,
about?
I played guitar, and I don't want to say I sang because my voice is about as. I mean, this is what my voice sounds like. It's like an even worse Bob Dylan. But yeah, I was in this like loud indie punk band out of college. I did that for a couple of years, semi-professionally. But yeah, I was in a band.
Right?
What
Did you guys write originals, or was it like
Oh yeah,
mainly
for
a
sure.
cover band?
Yeah, like we weren't
Oh.
talented. We weren't talented enough to
Yeah.
play other people's music. Like we had to play our own because we couldn't cover songs to save our lives. But yeah, I was meeting a couple college buddies. Yeah, like we were on the radio once or twice. It was a good time. Yeah, I do miss it. I would say that the firefighting is the second best job I ever had because I really loved being a musician. It was like the greatest 4 years of my life.
Yeah, I know it is very fun. Like I'm actually well, I originally joined a band. I formed a band, and I was actually the guitarist for the band. And now
Okay, right on.
I'm currently the bassist for the band, and I am the main songwriter and I sing. If you can't tell by my beautiful voice, but
What's the name of your band?
I actually came up with the name, and the name is Robo Possum Revival. But my band, I actually just last night, my bandmates confronted me about it. They're like, "We need to change the name, man. Like, they can't handle it anymore."
Possum Revival. Okay,
Revival.
I'm writing this down because I'm going to check it out.
don't have working on our first album right now. We haven't released it yet, so you're probably not gonna find very much. But yeah, maybe I don't know.
In the future.
Yeah, in the future, we're probably gonna be a different name because nobody likes the Robo Possum Revival, which is shocking because it's a great name. But
Tom, I mean, the best band name,
Content.
the best band name we came up with but never used was Tom Cruise Missile. So you get that one for free. You should use that.
oh yeah, I'll throw that one at them because
Throw
they're
that one
looking
out there.
for more.
You probably get
Yeah.
sued. You probably get sued by the Church of Scientology. But Tom Cruise Missile, great band name.
All right, do you have anything left to ask him, Mason? Because I have like one final question if you don't have anything more.
No, I don't have anything more. No.
Well, do you have any like leftover any stories or anything like anything you wanted to share that we haven't gotten around to asking you about, like anything funny or anything cool or whatever?
I mean, we kind of covered everything, really. I mean, it's since this is like a day in the life kind of podcast, like it's really I would just suggest that anyone who's even interested in it, mildly interested, thinks it looks cool, whatever it may be, dude, look into it. It's a fantastic career. Like I can't say enough about how much I enjoy it, how fulfilling it is. It's really been nothing but positive for me. Like there's hard days, don't get me wrong. You see a lot of bad things happen to good people, but no, thanks for having me, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. I hope I answered all your questions. I hope I don't get in too much trouble for all the people listening to this. And yeah,
Just the cops after you.
What's that? Oh yeah, I'm
Cops
sure.
after you.
Please, they talk shit all the time. Screw them. But yeah, so
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
no, it's pretty much all I got, man.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We learned a lot from you. You were very entertaining. It's always weird. Like every episode we've had so far, I found that every person we've had on is always cooler than me, and you're not an exception. But
I mean, well, I appreciate that.
yeah, all right. Well,
We
thank
really
you.
did appreciate having you with us today.
Hey,
Yeah,
no, for
yeah,
sure.
thank you a lot.
Kick me the link whenever this gets posted on Spotify or whatever. I
Oh
really
yeah.
appreciate it, guys.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to the episode. Please follow us on all the social media. We're on Twitter, we on Instagram. You can listen to us anywhere, like SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Anchor. I believe we're on Pocket Casts now. I don't know. I'll put the others in the description if you want to look. But yeah, thank you for everybody. Oh yeah, tell your friends about the show. Actually,
Will do.
yeah, we my one of my best friends, he actually heard the show for the first time yesterday, and he told me, "Oh, I listened to it all." And then he actually shouted us out on his Instagram or whatever, and that got it got us a bunch of followers. I don't know if it'll translate over to but
I mean, everyone
hopefully.
in my department will probably listen to this, and I'll probably get fired.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I'll post it to as many people as I can.
Yeah.
We'll get it going.
Anybody else who they want to be on the show, please contact us at the extraordinary shoe store podcast at gmail.com. And yeah, thank you for listening, everybody. All right, bye.